Congressman McGovern represents Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District in Washington, D.C. He began his work in the House of Representatives in 1996, and since that time, he has been a voice for the most vulnerable and a strong advocate for working families here in Massachusetts. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Congressman McGovern.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Alicia. And let me welcome you all to Worcester. You know, I am so thrilled that so many of you are here today. It gives me great hope. Thank you for being born. You know, people have been asking me over and over and over again, you know, what's it like in Washington? And my response has been the same. I'm living the dream. And nightmares are dreams, too. You know, Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to hold the highest office in this land. He is erratic, he is unhinged, and he is dangerously uninformed. You know, I have never been more worried about nuclear war in my life. And I worry about the damage he's doing to this planet. And my heart aches for those who struggle in our country because he simply doesn't care. And I worry about our politics. He has made it so coarse and so offensive and so demeaning. You know, I remind my 16-year-old daughter every day that this is not normal. And we can never make it normal. It must never be normal. This is unacceptable. But as troubled as I am over Donald Trump, I am equally disturbed by this Republican-controlled Congress. They are wholly beholden to corporate special interests. They are complicit with this president as he tries to undermine the Environmental Protection Agency. They are spineless and refuse to stand up to Trump when he embraces bigotry and hate and racism. And they don't have the guts or the spine to stand up to the National Rifle Association and stand with us instead to enact sensible gun safety legislation in the face of massacre after massacre after massacre. You know, there's something wrong in the United States of America where in many states it's easier to buy a gun than it is to register to vote. That is wrong. And we have a Congress that is as narrow-minded and as bigoted and as racist as this president when it comes to protecting immigrants and refugees. You know, and we have a Congress that really is only interested in power for the sake of power. It's not about lifting people up. It's about holding on to power. You know, the fact of the matter is we need to win back the House in 2018. Failure is not an option. The stakes have never been higher. And the issues have never been more important. You know, Paul Ryan, as Elizabeth Warren told you, is pushing this week a tax bill that cuts taxes for millionaires and billionaires and at the same time would raise taxes on millions of middle-class families. And they go out and they say, this is a middle-class tax cut. But, you know, I guess, you know, in Trump's Washington, you know, it's okay to say those things because in Trump's Washington, up is down, black is white, and billionaire tax cuts mean middle-class tax cuts. They have it. The facts don't matter in this Congress any more than they do in this White House. But the fact of the matter is, you know, this Congress is not only interested in huge giveaways to the wealthiest people in this country, the most well-off, the most well-connected, but they have launched an all-out assault against those who struggle the most, those who are struggling in poverty. The Speaker of the House has announced his intention to go after the social safety net, programs like SNAP, which used to be known as food stamps, to provide people enough to eat. That's what the program's about. You know, there are 42 million Americans who are hungry in this country. We are the richest, most powerful country in the world, and there is not a single congressional district in America that is hunger-free. As a congressman, as a United States citizen, I'm ashamed of that fact. We ought to be working to eradicate hunger. rather than make it worse. And by the way, when I hear the Republicans say, well, the bottom line is these people are just lazy. The reality is the majority of people on SNAP are not expected to work because they're kids, they're senior citizens, they're disabled. Of those who can work, a majority work. Why aren't we angry over the fact that when you work in this country, you don't earn a livable wage and you still have to rely on SNAP to put food on the table? Last week the House Republicans made history. They officially broke their own record from last session, and that is now they are the most closed Congress in the history of the United States of America. Now let me translate what that means. It means that bills don't go through regular order. It means that bills go to the floor with no amendments being made in order. It's strictly up or down, where they can ram things through, where they don't allow Democrats or Republicans the ability to be able to make things better. That goes against what the Congress is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be a deliberative body. We're supposed to be the people's house, not the Russia house. This is the kind of stuff you'd see in Putin's Russia, not in the United States of America. And that's what they did on health care. You had a health care bill that was written behind some locked doors in some secret room in the United States Capitol. No regular order, no hearings, no amendments, no CBO scored, no nothing. And they rushed the bill to the floor that would throw 25 million people off of health care. It is absolutely outrageous. Let me just say this. I watched, like all of you did very intently, the last campaign. And when Donald Trump talked about health care reform, as Elizabeth Warren said, well, he never got very specific. The best he would say, I'll replace it with something terrific. But he never got into, but I think the impression was that health care reform, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, was about improving access, was about making sure more people get covered, was about lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Nobody, I don't care whether you're the most conservative Republican in the country, I think really thought that when they were talking about health care reform, they were talking about tossing 25 million people off of insurance or taking away essential health benefits. Nobody thought that. And they rushed this thing through under the most closed process that you could possibly imagine. And I'm a big believer that a lousy process usually ends up with lousy legislation. We need to win back this House so we can restore some dignity to the Congress, and so we can give people the ability to believe in their government again, so that they know it's a government of and by the people. So here's the deal. The 2018 midterm elections have already begun. They are happening now as we speak. We cannot wait until 5 months or 10 months from now to start. The time is now. The election of Donald Trump shows us what happens when we all don't do what we need to do, when we take some things for granted. So we need you. We need you to help us raise money. We need you to recruit volunteers. We need you to call your relatives and your friends in other states and tell them to get activated. We need you to do everything, and I mean everything, that you possibly can to try to electrify the electorate to get out there and participate in these elections. And if you're a Democrat, register as a Democrat. Go out there and help us build our party. Help us get more good candidates to run. But now is the time. We can't wait. And I know I'm preaching to the converted, but it's good therapy for me. So I'm just... But the fact of the matter is, all these issues that we care about, racial justice, climate change, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, immigrant rights, reversing the growing income inequality in this country, protecting voting rights, campaign finance reform, helping the dreamers, you name it, all those things are going to be on the ballot. And we cannot move forward on anything. And this is just the reality. We cannot move forward on anything without the votes. Now, we're doing damage control, and we're doing everything we can to do damage control, but I'm tired of always being on the defensive. I'm tired of just kind of keeping things as they are. I want to move things forward, and if you're in control of the House or the Senate, you can set the agenda. And so when we're talking about health care, we won't be talking about how many people we're going to throw off. We'll be talking about how we build on the Affordable Care Act. Some of us like Medicare for all. Some of us don't want a public option. Some of us want to find ways to reel in these drug companies. Whatever it is, what we all want is we want better health care for everybody in this country. And that's the focus we ought to have in Congress. So we have work to do here in Massachusetts. We all love everybody we elect in Massachusetts for the most part. But the bottom line is Nikki Tsongas has decided to retire. Her seat, we need to make sure, stays in progressive hands. And we need to do all we can to make sure that Elizabeth Warren gets reelected. And we also need to be working on other parts of the country, and especially in those districts near us. The second CD in Maine, for example. We can take that back. We want to make sure that these two incredible Democratic women who are leaders in the House of Representatives in New Hampshire, Annie Custer and Carol Shea Porter's leaving. That seat's open up. We want to make sure they stay in Democratic hands. We have a CD in New York, the 19th in New York, right along the western border. It's a nice drive, go up, and we can do campaigning. You could get out the vote calls. You can do persuasion calls right from here in Massachusetts to those districts. But let me just say this to all of you here. I am so happy to be with all of you, and I want to echo what Elizabeth said. It is brutal to show up to work every day with the cast of characters down there. It really is. But this gives me hope. You are what hope looks like. You are the resistance. You are the grassroots. You are patriots who love this country and want to take it back. And so let us stand together. Let us stop Trump. Let us stop this crazy Republican majority in the House and Senate. And let's remind people all across this country what we stand for. From health care for all, to protecting the dreamers, to helping the middle class, to protecting our environment, to increasing wages, to standing for a different kind of politics. A politics where we respect one another, where it's not unheard of to use the word love in your speech, where we actually understand that if we're going to succeed in this country, we have to be together. We have to be unified. We have to reject those who keep on driving wedges right down the middle of our cities and our towns and our rural areas. Enough of that. I'll just close with this. I used to have a history professor who always used to end every class by saying the world will not get better on its own. Every class. And to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I do now. Nothing. You look at our history. Nothing changes. There would be no civil rights movement. There would be no anti-war movement. There would be no environmental movement unless like-minded people came together and stood together and fought like hell for what they believe in. So I am so grateful that you are here, ready to fight like hell, and you can count on me. I will always be wind at your back. Thank you for being here.
Carlos Rojas Alvarez has been a community and youth organizer and policy advocate for over 8 years. When his immigration status barred him from enrolling in college, Carlos became an education policy associate at Youth on Board and the New England representative to the National Coordinating Committee of the United We Dream Network, the largest undocumented youth-led network in the country. Please join me in welcoming Carlos Rojas Alvarez.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you, Alicia. And I'm really excited to be speaking after two members of Congress. I'm sure that you've made it very easy for me to follow up. Well, I'm here to tell you a story. I was born in Colombia, in a city called the City of Eternal Spring. And it was surrounded by green, lush mountains everywhere you looked. It was my birthday yesterday, and per tradition, thank you. And per tradition, my mother told me the story of how we got to this country. And every birthday I reach, she's astounded at how big and grown I am. A working mother, she was practically single by the time that I was 3. She got a call from her brother, who was already in the United States. He promised to help her get to America, but on one condition. And that condition was that she leave me behind. America, he said, is not a country for immigrant kids. He gave her 5 minutes to decide while he spoke to my grandmother. And in those 5 minutes, my mother looked at me on the floor as I was playing with toy cars, and she imagined a life without me. And worse, she imagined my life without her. "I'll find another way," she told him. And he hung up on her. That was in February, and in June, we were on a plane headed to the United States. Those are the kinds of choices that millions of immigrants have to make to get to this country. My mother is the kind of immigrant that will make this country great again. And I'm so glad that she made the right choice for me to be in this country, because I'm so ecstatic to be with all of you today. So I want to tell you a little bit about the way undocumented immigrant youth, known as Dreamers, won the biggest immigration victory the country had seen in 26 years. We started in small pockets across the country, just like you. One by one, we stepped out of the shadows. We told our stories, first with our voices disguised and our faces blurred, and then in groups, and then by the hundreds. We learned to tell our stories to people who didn't look like us. We learned to tell our stories to people who had been raised to call us illegal aliens. We learned to tell our stories to people who had been raised to believe that we were the enemy. So what story do you have to tell? Everybody has a story to tell. We confronted democratic power and exposed the hypocrisy of an administration who had deported more immigrants than all other presidents combined. We showed the country that while the party promised it wasn't deporting children and students, we were being deported every single day. And we stopped deportations right in their tracks. Even when it meant stepping out in front of ICE buses, like we did in Arizona. On June 15th of 2012, a few days after I graduated from high school, President Obama announced Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, from the Rose Garden. It was the largest immigration victory that we had seen in a very long time, and young people made that happen. I'm hopeful that if immigrant, undocumented youth could win then, all of us in this room can win again. I'm confident that we can push the limit, we can stretch imaginations, and dream up a world that is possible. And there are 3 things that we have to do to win again. 1, it's time that we get bold. Defending immigrants, valuing Black lives, saving the Affordable Care Act, and defending the planet will require bold action from everyone. Here in Massachusetts alone, there's plenty to support. What are you planning to do to connect with immigrant groups in your town or city to support the Safe Communities Act? Or to stop the deportation of a loving mother or a student? Are you ready to call your friends and cousins and parents who might live in red districts and explain to them why I, a young man that you heard speak not a long time ago, needs the Clean Dream Act now? Are you ready to knock on 20,000 doors as Indivisible for the millionaire's tax? And what are you prepared to do when another young Black man is gunned down by the police? The second thing we have to do, it's time to heal as a movement. Now more than ever, we're being called to build movements that are sustainable and that are centered on liberation for all of us. I want to get real here. How many of you have unfriended a family member or a friend on social media since the election? How many of you are still not talking to someone because of a political difference? Movements that discard people, movements that fail to recognize the goodness in every person, are movements that are destined to fail. We need restoration and repair instead of punishment. We need to call people in, not out, and we need radical love. And what that means is we need to answer the call of those who came before us, like Dr. King, like Rosa Parks, like Lillian, Masadiba, Matabane, and Goyi, to take responsibility as people to liberate ourselves and everyone else around us. I know that what I'm asking you is unfair. Believe me, I feel the exact same way. It's not exactly a piece of cake to listen to a struggling father of 4 call me illegal. It's not exactly easy to watch young children tease other children because of the color of their skin or because of their accents. But I believe we have a responsibility to bring as many people over to our side, and I think that begins with principled love. We missed something big this past election that I can't afford to miss again, that my mother can't afford to miss again, and that you all can't afford to miss again. My colleague and I invite you to join our workshop at 12:45. Open doors, healing, dialogue, and listening across political difference. If you want to learn how to begin to be able to do this. I'm so excited to be with you today, and I'm sure that with great and beautiful people like you in this room, we can begin to win again and again. Thank you.